All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all for joining us. I am Samantha Graham with the Institute for Emerging Issues. I am the head of our BNNC program, which stands for Building a New Digital Economy in North Carolina. On the call today, we have Colin Fox, who's our Digital Inclusion Fellow, and Kylie Foley, who is our Digital Inclusion Project Manager. Please use the chat function as you see fit. Ask any questions, let us know where you're from and why you're interested in digital inclusion and digital equity. Today, we're going to hear from Pat Millen, the president and co-founder of E2D. Before we hear from him, though, we're just going to do a quick overview of who we are and what the BNNC program is, some place setting definitions on what digital inclusion is, and some key terms. We'll hear from Pat, and then Kylie is going to give us an overview for the Digital Skills Report in preparation for our webinar next month. At the end, we'll have some Q&A, but during Pat's presentation, we will also have some time for you to answer some questions. Again, feel free to use the chat, and we're looking forward to today and hearing from you. We want to thank the NC Electric Cooperatives and CoBank for sponsoring our webinar series. So the Institute for Emerging Issues is a bipartisan think tank at the NC State University. We connect North Carolinians across sectors and perspectives for collaborative work on emerging issues that affect all North Carolinians. We've had annual forums since 1986, and we've been doing year-round work for about 21 years now. We had a forum last month on February 13th that focused on talent-first economics. The BNNC program came out of a forum in 2020, right before the COVID pandemic, and it was focused on reconnecting North Carolinians back to technological opportunities. The goal of the program is to equip counties to meet the needs and build more digitally equitable communities. We want North Carolina to be the first state in the nation where every county has a digital inclusion plan. A digital inclusion plan is a strategic plan that addresses the components of digital inclusion and works to close the digital divide. So what do we mean by digital inclusion and digital divide? Well, thanks to our friends at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, we have some place setting terms. First, though, here's where we are with our plans. You'll see in the West, we have some counties who are yellow and green. They are currently working on plans and have some completed digital inclusion plans. We have a lot of partners in the East that already have plans in place or are working towards those. Our counties in the blue, they have digital inclusion plans in place, and they were funded from other organizations, either self-funded, and Focus Broadband was a very important partner in getting those plans in place. We couldn't do it without our sponsors and our partners. Thanks to, again, CoBank and the Electric Cooperatives for sponsoring this webinar series, and all of our other sponsors for helping to fund the digital inclusion plans and our various other projects we have to support this work. So here we are. What do we mean by the digital divide? So the digital divide is the issue, digital equity is the goal, and digital inclusion is the work. The digital divide is the gap between those who have affordable access, skills, and support to effectively engage online and those who do not. Technology constantly evolves, and the divide prevents equal participation and opportunities in all parts of life, disproportionately affecting people of color, Indigenous peoples, households with low incomes, people with disabilities, rural areas, and older adults. We saw this divide widen, and we saw how big it was during the COVID pandemic. What is digital equity? Equity is when you have affordable access and adoption. So it's a condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and the economy. It's important to note the use of equity versus equality. When we use the word equity, we accurately acknowledge the systematic barriers that must be dismantled before achieving equality for all. And now we're going to hear from Pat Millen. Again, he's the co-founder and the president of E2D based in the Charlotte area. Thank you, Pat.
Good afternoon, everybody. Very pleased to be here to talk to you a little bit about E2D, which stands for Eliminate the Digital Divide, and the work that we are doing and the work that we aspire to do throughout North Carolina. I just saw that one of our good colleagues, Carrie Del Mariani from Camden Institute. For those of you who are not familiar, they are in Durham and are doing similar work to what we do in the western part of the state. They are over in the eastern part of the state. But if I can share my screen, I'm just going to show you a short presentation, and then we can talk about things from there. So let's see if this works. Are we looking at a single slide again?
You're great.
All right, great. So E2D again stands for Eliminate the Digital Divide. We started 10 years ago this year. We're having our first anniversary, our 10th anniversary of our first distribution in August, and we're very excited about it. But in that time, we've distributed 34,000 computers, most of them, quite honestly, in the Mecklenburg, Charlotte area. But the factor, people, about 3.2 people per computer that we put into first-time homes use those computers. So over 100,000 people right now are using an E2D computer. We're really proud of that. And our model, which is different than probably any other model in the country, ours at least requires that 100% live at or below the federal poverty line. And right now, just to match the American Connectivity Program, we are working with 200% of the poverty line and lower. So we started very simply. My daughter, who was 12 years old 10 years ago, she's now 22, came home one day from the 7th grade and said, "Dad, every assignment we get at school presumes there's a computer at home to do the work. And I know that there are kids at our school that probably can't afford a computer." And she said, "That's really unfair. What are we going to do about it?" And that one question sort of launched this enterprise, which we now call E2D. We started off just as a family, looking into what the digital divide was. We didn't know. We'd heard of it, but we didn't know how pervasive it was. We didn't know, is it everywhere or is it just in inner cities? And what we came to find is that it is pretty much everywhere. So we started off with a single elementary school, and we learned, like many of you probably have, of this three-legged stool. In order to be on the right side of the digital divide, you have to have a computer device, you have to have access to reliable broadband, and you have to have the digital skilling that can make it significant, that can make your life productive. And the third one's pretty important. If you don't know how to use a computer's not going to be particularly helpful. And the analogy I always use is, if I gave Sam a trombone and said, "Okay, make good, beautiful music with it, I'll see you later," you might be able to learn how to play that trombone over time, but in terms of being able to play beautiful music, that could take some time. So we came in not knowing anything about the digital divide. We have a corporate headquarters about 3 miles from where I sit right now for Lowe's Home Improvement. And living in the little town that I live in, I know 25 people at all times that work for Lowe's. So I went to the person who I thought was highest on the organizational chart and said, "Hey, would you be willing to donate some computers to us?" And he came back and said, "Geez, I have no idea if we even do that kind of thing. Let me look into it." And a couple of weeks later, he came back and he said, "We love what you're proposing to do to get computers out to families that need them. We're going to be able to give you 500 computers a year going forward." And we're like, "Oh boy, that really changes everything now, doesn't it?" And so we started going from school to school. We had a marvelous volunteer, still have a marvelous volunteer, who is a retired Duke Energy computer engineer who helped us refurbish computers. I would literally bring him crates of computers to his basement lab next to his lawnmower and his weed whacker, and he would refurbish these computers and we would get them out to schools locally. And within about 6 months, we had eliminated the digital divide for 5 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school, and we were on our way. Along the way, we got to know a lot about the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library and Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and we're very proud right now. We're part of an organization in Charlotte called the Center for Digital Equity, which has been stood up in the last year through money that's been granted through the mayor of Charlotte and what we call our racial equity initiative. And so the Center for Digital Equity is a bunch of stakeholders that have come together to address issues of inequity as it relates to digital inclusion in the Mecklenburg County area. I want you to look at that picture on the left of that young man with that computer, because the work that we do is extremely joyful. And when we get to get computers to people that are dying to get computers for the first time, the boys often look like this. They're sort of suppressing the smiles. I love the fact that the girls often look more excited about it. The general proposition for us is corporations donate computers to us, and then we have 3 computer labs. And what we do, what we think our special sauce is we hire high school students from Title I backgrounds. We hire them. It's a very competitive process to hire these kids. We get the best of the best. They're amazing. They're smart. They're talented. But we don't just bring them on board to refurbish computers. We invest in their social capital, and we pay a lot of money. They start at 2 times minimum wage. So in many cases, the kids that get a job at E2D are making twice as much an hour as anyone else in their family. But if we can repair these computers that we get in from corporations, we put on new computer software. We do a lot with Windows 10. And then we get them out to communities that have distinct need. Typically, when we go out into communities, the families contribute $80 to their solution. So it's not a free computer. There's a slight cost on it, but the computers cost us, upwards of $200 a piece to refurbish them by the time we do all the work required and replace components like hard drives and batteries and cords and things like that. So when a family pays $80, we go out and raise money in the community to basically subsidize the balance of what that is. But we're a nonprofit, and it is with significant pride that we put these computers in locally. And what it does is it makes students better students, and it makes parents better job seekers, better earners. And as we all know, the productivity that a computer brings to a family is just so essential. We've dealt with over 187 public schools where people have gotten computers. We have a grant through Spectrum where we do work specifically with homeless, home insecure families. Very proud of that work. We've gotten 10 or more computers from over 70 companies throughout the Carolinas. And we've hired 180 of those high school students, those what we call student lab techs. So what do we need to be able to do this? Well, first of all, you have to realize the imperative for getting computers to families has never been higher. COVID, of course, put a real emphasis on that, a really bright spotlight on that. But when we started this in 2013, our imperative was sort of, well, wouldn't it be great if we could put a computer into every house? Wouldn't it be great if every home had its own computer? But now that imperative is much more distinct. We pretty much believe every home has to have a computer, or else that household will fail. Without a computer, you're not going to be successful in 2023. Charlotte, North Carolina, or North Carolina, anywhere. You have to have a computer to do the things that your family needs to be productive. If you want to go get a job in a fast food restaurant, chances are you have to fill out an online application to get that done. So what do we do to make ourselves successful, to try to come up with home-based digital inclusion for everyone? We go out and seek computers from corporations. We get small firms will give us 2 or 3 computers. One year Lowe's gave us 3,500 computers, and of course there's everything in between. We need to market and promote the fact that these computers are available, and if folks want them, there's not enough computers to satisfy the needs statewide. So we're out constantly raising computers and raising money to help pay to make these computers as low cost as possible. And what we need is we need local champions. If we're working in Western North Carolina, and presumably Cary and Cramden are working in Eastern North Carolina, you have to have a champion in every location. We're E2D, you're getting to know of us for the first time potentially today. There's a lot of trust that has to happen before you can just show up. I made the mistake once of going to a county, showing up at a county commission meeting and saying, hey, we're here, this is what we do, and just got nothing but stony silence in return because we hadn't done the work to establish ourselves. By the same token, now we're out working in counties in Western North Carolina. We haven't done a lot. We've worked in probably 7 or 8 different counties now. And we now know that this work is very hyper-local work. You have to work with the people in the counties that know where the need is and have the trust of the community. We really feel like digital inclusion is the most important equity item in front of us presently. You know, our tagline is talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. But we think in order to have all of the elements come together, you have to have a computer. We have people in our local market here in Mecklenburg County that every single Friday they take their paycheck to the check cashing store and they get 67 cents on the dollar. And when I can go to them and say, hey, what if I told you I could get you a 50% raise today? And all you have to do is open on an online banking account and you deposit that check and you get 100 cents on the dollar instead of 67. Folks don't know all the things that are possible with a computer. Everyone knows what schooling represents. Most people know that getting good jobs can make a difference. But when we were preparing for this call yesterday with Kylie and Sam, we were talking about the fact that so many jobs that exist in North Carolina today really require 3 things. They require a computer, they require affordable, reliable broadband, but then just a high school education. There are so many call center jobs that if you have a computer and the internet, you can work for $20, $24 an hour answering the phone and troubleshooting problems from a corporation standpoint. Excuse me. The example I often use is, you know, if you're in Richmond County up in Reidsville, North Carolina, and somebody's Coke machine at Zaxby's breaks down and they dial the 800 number to get somebody to troubleshoot it and take a ticket and figure out how to get that fixed, it could ring to a household in Reidsville, North Carolina, and the person on the other line might think they're on the 23rd floor of the Coca-Cola Plaza in Atlanta answering the call, but that call is actually being managed by somebody in the state of North Carolina in potentially a rural location. These are great jobs. These are great jobs. So again, we think in 2023, North Carolina, you cannot prosper without full access to these devices. And so that's why we're here. If you want to take a snapshot of this or write down my name and my telephone number, those go directly to me. Our goal is for everyone in North Carolina, for every household to have a computer. We currently are not getting in enough for me to confidently say that we can handle everybody in North Carolina. I think Cary would agree that we all can't do it, even just Cramden and E2D. But we're here to begin this work with you guys. And We hope that if you have needs locally in your market, that we can come meet you. I've got a couple of colleagues on the call. One of them, Christy Cowan, is our Director of Outreach and Distribution. We just 3 weeks ago, well, let me put it really in context. 5 weeks ago, I met two people in Iredell County up in Statesville, North Carolina. Never met anybody up there before. 3 weeks later, we did a distribution there and distributed 300 computers for families that had never had computers before. And it was an incredible day. It was so much impact and so much joy. And so I hope we can continue to do this work. We know we're going to need help from the state of North Carolina to source more computers. But we also know that Governor Cooper and the Broadband Infrastructure Office, specifically Secretary Weaver and Deputy Secretary Denny, they want this to work. They want to see this happen. And so to the extent that E2D can play a part in that, we look forward to hopefully working with as many of you as possible.
Thank you so much, Pat. We're going to open it up for some Q&A, but to get us started, we have some questions for you. So not every region has an E2D or a private enterprise that could do this kind of work. What would be your advice for getting started or to partner with an organization like yours or Camden?
So I would recommend that you reach out to us and Camden immediately. And just let us know what your assessment is. And if you haven't done an assessment locally, I would definitely do an assessment. It was that one principal at that one elementary school in August of 2013 who came to us and said, we think we have 54 families that don't have a computer. We're like, well, shoot, all we got to do is find 54 families and then they'll have a 0% digital divide at this one school. And then we did it in 2 schools and 5 schools and 20 schools. So again, I think this work begins with a single email to me or to my colleague, Christy Cowan, who is Christy at e-2d.org. And while we can't say we'll be there tomorrow, we're going to try to get there as quickly as we can to help.
Thank you. And Christy just put some links there in the chat, as well as Camden Institute's website, and Carrie from Camden is on this call. So Dawn in the chat has asked, how can community-based organizations access resources to build this infrastructure in their own communities?
So that's a great question. So I think the work that we do in terms of obtaining computers and refurbishing computers using students is a very replicatable playbook. But if you are in a foreign distant county in North Carolina that doesn't have a lot of computers from a corporate standpoint, that's hard, right? And from a digital skilling standpoint, where is your workforce going to come from? So libraries, community colleges, even, like if you live in Valley Crucis, North Carolina, you've got, 60 computer operators at the Mass General Store headquarters that know exactly how to teach people how to use computers. So it kind of comes down to finding the resources that you have locally, identifying what you don't have, which in a lot of cases may be corporate computers to be refurbished. But between all of us and between, the State Chamber of Commerce and the state credit bureaus and banks, that's kind of the cool thing about this. And I know Carrie agrees with me about this. The answer for the 100% digital divide for North Carolina exists. It's there. We just have to get these computers in. When I make this presentation in Charlotte, I just wave my hand and say, it's in the skyscraper right behind me. There are tens of thousands of computers every day that are being retired by companies. They might be getting pennies for the pound for those, selling those in an off market. But if they come to E2D and we're able to refurbish them and get them out to North Carolinians, the value of that is far more valuable than just chopping them up for bits. as some companies do right now.
Thank you. Carissa has asked, what are the differences you see from rural to urban areas? I don't know if that means if the divide or getting the
So
computers.
my gut feel are the obvious things. There are counties in North Carolina that still don't have or clearly don't have universal access to broadband. There's not much in Mecklenburg County. Every road in Mecklenburg County has some sort of access. I'm sure that's true in other large counties, Forsyth, Wake, maybe New Hanover. But some more rural counties, I think the state of North Carolina still got a lot of work to do to get broadband out there. But I also know they have tremendous amounts of infrastructure dollars coming in from the federal government to make that work happen. And I know they're working very, very hard to get these broadband lines deployed throughout North Carolina. There will be some last mile issues for the foreseeable future, but even in the event that you live down a long winding road away from everybody else, if we can even just get access to a couple of key points within the county where people know that they can reliably go to access, whether it's a library or a school system or whatever, that's first and foremost. And I do believe, and Sam, you would probably know this, I believe that there's 100 counties in North Carolina, but there's 105 school districts.
Okay.
Yeah, Mooresville has its own. But every school district now does have a dedicated network through the state of North Carolina's efforts. So every county has it. And the question is now, what can we do to broaden it and make it more available and more
Every school
universal?
district and community college and library is on the MCNC fiber. Courtney Smith, who I know is in the Albemarle region, so Northeast North Carolina, has asked if our region wants to participate in this type of program, how much would it cost us? How much does it cost?
Is Albemarle Stanley County?
Albemarle is the region, so it's like
Oh,
Bertie,
it's not Albemarle, the town.
the
It's
town, yeah, the
Albemarle,
region,
way up
Albemarle,
here.
yeah.
Okay, ask me that question again, please.
How much would it cost their region or any group to participate with to partner with E2D? How much does it cost to get a laptop or desktop?
So I think the back of the napkin math is by the time we're able to get a computer refurbished and shipped out to someplace other than somebody coming to get it from us, you're probably going to need to budget for between $100 and $150 a computer for that. But these computers that one would be getting in this case, these are computers that if you were buying them right now, they'd be $800 to $1,000. I mean, these are really amazing. You know, we just got in 1,000 computers from Honeywell Corporation, and every one of these computers, I feel like Honeywell required their aeronautical engineers to wear white gloves when they use their computers because they have come to us and they're beautiful. And by the time we put on new software and operating systems, these are computers that'll easily last another 5 years these are not junkers. These are not like used Chromebooks. These are really good computers.
Any tablets?
We do take tablets. Tablets are actually kind of cool. They come in one of two forms. If they're locked, they're a little bit harder to deal with. Apple makes it easy to lock your tablet. If they're unlocked, you're like 5 swipes away from a factory reset. And tablets are excellent for younger kids. You know, kids that are in elementary school whose fingers maybe don't work quite as adroitly as grown-ups. We love tablets. We only do tablets and laptops. Our buddies at Cramden do desktops as well. We're a boutique in the sense that we feel like the people that are getting our computers really need the mobility to do it. And selfishly, it's so much easier to inventory laptops than it is monitors and keyboards and towers. It just doesn't take as much room. And so we've always just been laptops and tablets.
And how much are tablets?
Plus or minus the same thing. I mean, we have some tablets from time to time that we would get rid of for $50. It just depends on what we have.
Okay. Any other questions here in the chat? We talked a bit yesterday, but about this, but what keeps you up at night, Pat, when you're thinking about the digital divide and how we're really gonna, make North Carolina the most inclusive state?
Mhm. I think what really makes me anxious is, again, to see a solution that's so readily available. Like, there's so many injustices and so many imbalances that are out there in this world, that are, seemingly impossible to conquer. This is this is able to be conquered if we all have the will to get that done. So as an example, we are now built into this. There's a statute out there where Cramden and E2D are encouraged to get university-based computers, the University of North Carolina system. And in fact, we are getting computers from a few, but we also have several universities that are just flat out ghosting us and not hearing our plea for their computers. And so what keeps me up at night is when I read in the newspaper that 925 people are being laid off in Canton, North Carolina, from a paper mill where their parents and their parents' parents have worked in this, and their whole life has been based on a single paper mill, and now they're all going to be unemployed. And then I think about colleges that are not too far down the road from there that are getting rid of 1,000 computers a year, and they're not donating to us or to Cramden. And yet, if we could get those 1,000 computers and we could get those refurbished, we could send them to Canton, and we could help start that arduous but necessary process of reskilling people for new jobs that have had the same job potentially for a very, very long time. I think it's like anything, guys. When you look out there and you see that there are solutions out there, but you can't quite grasp them, even though they're right there, that's maddening. I prefer not to waste my energy howling at the moon, angry at certain colleges that are not getting us computers, or being angry at politicians or that are not doing everything they can to get us computers. But I would sleep a lot better if we could get in more computers so that we can get them out. Everyone in North Carolina has to have an unrestricted computer in their home. And when I say that, that's not the Chromebook that the school might issue to the kid, because those Chromebooks are not meant for the entire family. They're meant for the kid to do the homework. And in many cases, you can't send an email outside of the school system suffix. Nathan Cartwright, that is Haywood County. Haywood County is not that far from Cullowhee. We sure could use some computers from Western Carolina University. As long as those solutions are out there and I can't quite reach them, I will slowly be losing my mind until we get them.
How can we help support you in getting some sleep? What can we do as a group and through our work?
We want to get to know you guys. We want to know your counties. We want to know your municipalities. We are very earnest in this work. We are going to Raleigh next week to the NC Rural Summit because, again, we want to learn more about how are things in, what makes Surrey County different from Avery County, different from Mitchell County. We want to know more about where you're from and what your assessment is from a needs standpoint. Once we can articulate that together as a group, and when I say as a group, I mean IEI, I mean the state of North Carolina, I mean all of you. If we can make that articulation and make our case, I think we can start to see things like companies going, wow, we need to start doing this. During COVID, we got contributions from 8 new companies during COVID. We got probably from 20, but we got from 8 who at one point were hard-nosed. Like previously, when I asked them, can we have your computers when they're done? They're like, that's never going to happen. We're worried about security. We make money on reselling our computers. We had 8 companies, big ones in some cases, come to us during COVID going, okay, we're going to figure out a way to get this done because we see how important it is. That's what we need is all we need is that light bulb to go off. Carrie and I could probably list off 100 companies each that we're dying to get computers from. I'm getting computers from 9 different financial institutions in Mecklenburg County, and the second largest one isn't giving us any. That keeps me up at night. I want to get number 2 to start giving me some computers. I'll let you guys imagine who that could be.
Well, thank you so much, Pat. Again, if anyone has additional questions, please put them in the chat. Now we're going to move over to Kylie, who's going to talk a bit about the digital skills report that came out with North Carolina as one of the examples they used. And we're going to have a webinar on that next month.
Absolutely. I want to, Dawn just raised her hand. So Dawn, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Thank you. I just wanted to find out, how do we get these types of resources expanded into communities of color where the communities that are being served have representation that look like them? I think it is extremely important to have a conversation about what inclusion and equity really looks like. And I appreciate the work that's being done. We have had great programs and outreach with crammed in our local communities. But that is definitely something that I hear continuously from young people and from people in community that really want to own their ability to do this kind of work.
That's a really great question. And so it depends on where you are, right? So like in Charlotte, North Carolina, the work that we've done, 92% of the computers that we distribute go out to persons of color. Of the staff that we have working for E2D, 92% of our staff are persons of color. That's not unintentional. There are parts of Western North Carolina where there are not as many persons of color. And so I can't speak to that with any accuracy, but what I can tell you is E2D and the Center for Digital Equity in Charlotte are very, very committed to making sure that the communities that we served are engaged in the work with us. And so as an example, I'm the work stream chair for the Center for Digital Equity for devices and connectivity, but I also have a member of one of the communities that we serve who is my co-chair. And we have 25 people on our committee, and half of those are coming from neighborhoods that we are aiming to serve. So I think your point is absolutely spot on, Dawn. This work has to be done with intention. And wherever you are, if you are on tribal lands, you need to be able to put people in place that can do this work in the ways that are most effective. And it's not necessarily going to be me doing that. We need to find people that can do this work as effectively as possible.
Thank you, Pat. Nathan from Haywood County also asked, are there any barriers for justice involved persons like myself? And before you answer, I just want to plug that we will have another webinar in April or May that will be focused on digital skills for Justice involved individuals with hopefully Philip Cooper at Land of Skycog and Bianca Reisdorf at UNC Charlotte. But Pat, if you have any thoughts, love to hear them.
I think the quick answer is I don't see why there should be any barriers. No. We do a lot of work locally here, and so no, I see no reason why that would need to be a barrier.
Great, thank you. Thank you for asking, Nathan. Any other questions? If so, we still have some time at the end, so you can put them in the chat later. Go ahead, Kylie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. I'm going to have Kirsten pull up some slides. So Pat was talking about an incredible part that often is one of the biggest challenges when talking about digital inclusion, which is appropriate devices for the users. And Pat, Sam and I talked about yesterday, and he brought it up a few times today. Having the correct device is huge for a lot of folks' economic opportunity. Working in rural North Carolina myself, I know that's huge to have people remain in place to where their family is, where their history is, where their ancestors are from, and wanting to stay, but not having the economic opportunity to do so. A computer and affordable broadband access and having the skills in order to complete a job that can help you remain where you want to be is really important. And so along with that, we really wanted to talk today about this fantastic report that has been reported all over North Carolina news. I would love to see in the chat if you've read the Closing the Digital Skills Divide report, came out in early February. We're actually going to have the report's main author, Amanda, join us on April 25th. We'll include that link in your follow-up email. It'll be shown a bit later too, so you can register for that. That'll be on April 25th, talking all about a deep dive into the digital skill divide. But we really wanted to give a preview today. And so I wanted to focus on the slides from Amanda's presentation, from the figures from the report itself. It's a little bit lengthy, but I hope that will give some opportunities today for you, if you haven't read it yet, for you to understand why this would be really important when talking about digital inclusion. So this report, like I mentioned, is from the National Skills Coalition. It is in partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, and they released the Closing the Digital Divide skill, again, like I said, in February, and it's a real-time snapshot of demand for digital skills in the U.S. labor market. Now, I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. There's a lot of different options, but a digital skill is things like email, spreadsheets, time cards, QuickBooks, accessing records, especially for medical personnel, and recording notes. And from their presentation, they said that part of the definition of digital inclusion is, of course, that workers will have access to digital literacy training, among having the appropriate devices and affordable access and technical support, like we just mentioned, talking about E2D. And so when we're talking about digital inclusion, of course, for a lot of folks that this is new language to, whether that be your local government or nonprofit local partners, they're really familiar with the issue of access. We know those last mile stories like Pat was bringing up before, where it's really hard to get high quality and affordable broadband access to a lot of folks, not only in rural areas, but urban areas as well. But this is saying once folks have it, and a lot of folks do have availability in their county, like Pat was sharing through the school district and through county public Wi-Fi hotspots, what are we going to do with that? And so some of the skills that are mentioned in the report are really, really vital to closing equity gaps that we see all over digital divide data. So on the left here is figure 1. You can see that this is digital skills upskilling is for everyone. It's for entry level and highly experienced workers. And so this is saying for North Carolina, for a robust economy, we know that having likely or most likely digital skills, which the report goes into depth, they manually coded, I believe, like 20,000 different skills to share which ones were digital or not. It's really fascinating to read. But again, this affects everyone. And in North Carolina, it doesn't really matter your education level. We know education level has a huge discrepancy when it comes to pay. There's a huge class divide based off previous discrimination and current discrimination against people of color, low income folks, tribal folks. But we do know that digital skills are in demand for jobs no matter your education level, which is really important for groups that are working with all types of people at all education levels to understand the importance of understanding the digital divide. And again, how to get folks better used to digital skills and updating them as well. The next slide talks about small businesses, which is really important in North Carolina. We're actually featured at the end of the report along with Indiana, which is really exciting. But over 47% of job listings through this report, which takes data from 2021, are all from small businesses. And you can see through it's a little hard to read, but the blue bar is definitely digital skills are required. So saying it's explicitly required in the job posting. And the yellow is likely or definitely digital skills are required. So again, this really toes the line of 92% of jobs require some sort of digital skills, especially for small businesses in North Carolina. The next one looks at the 47 million job postings that they looked at and said that there was a definite correlation between the number of digital skills required and pay increase. So for North Carolina's economy and a number of our collaborative efforts, like our Talent First Economics platform that we just did, we can share our recommendations that just came out of the forum Sam talked about last month in the chat. We know that helping folks learn and adopt digital skills are very important. And I want to read this quote from the report. People who qualify for jobs that require even one digital skill can earn an average of 23% more than those working in jobs requiring no digital skills, which is an increase of $8,000 per year for an individual worker. And like everything with the digital divide, we really have to hammer home that this is a racial equity issue among other inequity causes. And our next slide shows how important it is to invest in folks of color and people of color in North Carolina, helping them understand the importance of digital skills, upskilling, and again, increasing their wages. Personally, for me, reading this report, again, a little bit long, there's an executive summary and there's some really good figures. If you don't have the time to go through the whole thing, was really important for these reasons. For me, it was as someone who works in the digital inclusion space, like many of you, trying to always explain why digital inclusion, not just access, is important, really comes down to your language you're using. So proving that by increasing digital skills and helping folks understand their own digital literacy, that they can increase their own wages and therefore increase everything from their own tax incentives, their tax bases, for their local county, and also their family's income is really, really important. And also, again, like I mentioned, that North Carolina study is huge. To have our state spotlighted in the report is amazing. And I have a few stats from that. But last but not least, it's really important to really hammer home that the digital skills gap is all about inequity. People of color have been shut out of many avenues historically, and to increase the number and quality of digital skills, which we know has direct impact on wages. Of course, I'm sure you can imagine that a lot of the jobs that require the most technical and most number of digital skills are almost exclusively for white workers or are jobs that are represented by white workers. We know that has a huge income disparity, which has tons of health outcomes and is a life or death issues for many zip codes in North Carolina. And again, I just wanted to read two really impactful statements from the report on this. A growing understanding of this digital skills divide also illuminated how the ripple effects of historical policies and structural racism continue to contribute to modern day inequities in digital skills and access, and the vital role of public policy and practice in remedying inequities caused by prior policies. And if you haven't heard the Digital Equity Act, I want to bring that into it because we do have a solution. We do have funding coming down to really talk about this. So I wanted to read this from the report as well. If you go on the website mentioned, or that was in the chat earlier, you can also find out more about the Digital Equity Act. The Digital Equity Act is part of the landmark Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021. For the first time, Congress invested $2.7 billion in state and local efforts to help people build digital skills, as well as obtain access to broadband and devices. Importantly, this legislation identifies a number of covered populations, including people of color, low-income individuals, rural residents, veterans, among others, for whom states must specifically work to close equity gaps in digital access and skills. If you've attended the Department of Information Technology's webinars, they'll be coming out with a series of more. You'll hear this language a lot. It's really, really important that North Carolina really understands how our covered populations can be served, how they're serving themselves, how we can support on the ground efforts. And this report really, really hammers that home, like I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, North Carolina, like I said, was given a huge shout out at the end. They really focused on jobs and manufacturing, construction, and healthcare. And it gets down into the weeds about the importance of the number of digital skills and also the digital skills required. There's 1.3 million job postings in North Carolina in 2021, and 46% of those required at least one definitely digital skill, excuse me. And 91% of those required a definitely or likely digital skill. So when we're talking about the economy, we're talking about digital skills all over North Carolina. It's really important. We're excited to continue the conversation on April 25th. I challenge you to give yourself some homework time, hopefully during the workday, and read the report, or at least the executive summary, and really hone in on how this information, this data can be used in your own county to drive home the message of why digital inclusion and access is really important. I'm going to hand it over to Sam. We're going to do some closing and continue some questions for the rest of our time.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I think this connects back to Britt had a question in here. What's your best strategy or attitude to maintain for navigating political environments that are actively fighting against the concept of inequity in general, but especially denying inequity systematically exists? Pat, any thoughts? Or Kylie, I think it connects back to what you just talked about with the skills and workforce and how it affects the economies.
I mean, I think quite simply, the digital divide is the great evener, right? I think it's about social and economic development, but it is ultimately the ultimate rising tide raises all boats. I mean, placing everybody on an even playing field in terms of access to information, data, jobs, schooling, education, there's no downside, there's only upside. So it's a matter of going to politicians that maybe have biases and convincing them that this is a great opportunity to make citizens that to this point maybe haven't had the ability to prosper due to lacking technology. This is a great way to make everyone prosperous. Again, there's always going to be people, Brett, that aren't going to want to hear it, don't need to hear it. But from my perspective, I talk to people that one would think would have tremendous bias. And when you convince them that this is the ultimate win-win-win situation by getting people access to technology, it makes sense to them.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, real quickly, two things I thought of. One, my previous work at II was with rural faith leaders. And when rural faith leaders are often getting involved with digital inclusion, there have been a number of recipients of our Band and Sea grants. Reverend Dawn is on the line, who mentioned that she's done a lot of work in this space. Pastors don't have to be internet experts, but they are really good at trying to code switch and change language to help people understand, to bring people together. And so I've been really grateful to see our faith leaders understanding the importance of talking about digital inclusion as a human right, of understanding the importance for their congregants to go to telehealth meetings, for their own church to be online. We obviously know why it's really important for students and for schools in general. And I've just learned tremendously from pastors that have taken this and run with it and willing to be those cultural brokers in your community to advocate for digital inclusion. And so if you're not already involved with faith leaders, that's something we can talk about too. Please feel free to email me. There's other cultural workers besides faith leaders and communities as well. That's just the one I'm familiar with. And the second thing that really stuck with me is working with a government representative when they were getting very similar pushback about, well, we don't have basically the age-old question that folks have of, well, we don't have racism because we're in Western North Carolina and there's only white people, which is not true. We look at the population numbers. There are a lot more white folks than people of color. But this person really had a heart-to-heart conversation with their government representative and said, we are here to serve every single North Carolinian in our region. If we know that someone, because of their race, because of their gender, because of their age, is not getting the same services as other folks, why, like, it's all equal. We need to spend as much time with them as possible. And if we have the resources through digital inclusion, that's what we can work on. We can't always work on getting those last mile services in North Carolina. We can't always put in millions of dollars technology. There's other forces and companies at work doing that. But for a lot of the folks on this line, government representatives, nonprofits, and cultural workers, these are the questions that we have to ask folks that are in charge of the money, is really hammering home again. Every single person is a constituent of our community. If we know someone is lacking, and we especially if we know they're lacking because of historical inequities or things that are still happening based off the data that we can see for the digital divide, why not get involved? Why not actively talk about it? And they've had some good success really talking about the elephant in the room when it comes to race and gender and class and rural versus urban in Western North Carolina.
And I would just say, Kylie, you know, on this call, I see Annette Taylor. Annette is the head of our state's broadband equity office. I mean, her express job is to make sure that these opportunities are brought forth to every community. And so we're really privileged, I think, as a state that our government has prioritized this work. And I don't know, Annette, if you're passively on this call or actively, but if you have anything to add. Oh, I see you there. I'm sorry. I didn't even see you. I'm so glad we have you doing this work.
Thank you so much, Pat, for the shout out. I appreciate it. And Samantha, don't mean to hijack it, but it's great to see so many people on here and so many of the community champions that we're also partnering with to help us with our goals to close the digital divide. And we intend to connect with all of you when it comes to our listening sessions and our regional convenings. And IEI is very much involved in our process for that, because we want to hear from you. We obviously need to know from you all on the ground working what the challenges are, what the barriers are, how we address them, and how we get that word back to our federal partners.
Thank you, Annette.
Yes, and thanks to you, Pat, for all you're doing with devices.
All right, any further questions? Kirsten can share our last slide with just our upcoming webinars and some webinars from some of our partners. Our next scheduled webinar is March 28th. We're actually going to hear from Bruce Clark with the Center for Digital Equity out of Charlotte on best practices for signups for affordable connectivity plan. And then April 25th, we'll talk again about closing the digital divide, that report that Kylie just went over, and we're going to hear from the report's author. Our partners, SF Tech Council's Health and Tech webinars, March 15th, and then the NDIA community call, March 17th. That's usually just an open call that anyone can join and kind of just talk about challenges and opportunities in that space. Thank you all for joining us today. There will be a follow-up email sent out with all of the links that we shared today and the recording. And we thank you all for being here.